Horizon Zero Dawn came out 5 years ago, just a couple of days before Breath of the Wild. And then Horizon Forbidden West came out just a couple of days before Elden Ring. So as Donkey said, it has quite the habit of coming out before a better open world game, a much better open world game. But I played and reviewed Horizon Forbidden West for GameXplain, and before that I went back and completed Horizon Zero Dawn for the first time ever. And to be honest, I don't really think the game is all that great, and I don't think Forbidden West was all that great. But here is a retrospective review on Horizon Zero Dawn 5 years later. So we begin with the story and characters, with the former probably being the best part of the game. The characters are a bit meh. But Aloy is a badass, and I think that's the only real part to her character. I don't really think she's developed very well. She's just kind of like the good guy for good guy's sake, and there's never really much conflict throughout the story. During the story you're given little choices, but they don't really affect it all too much. Maybe an extra bit of dialogue down the line. But as a character, Aloy is super boring, and it's not really fixed in Forbidden West either. Like, from the start she's very determined and badass, but I think that's just kind of her whole character throughout the story. She's clearly conflicted about her past and, you know, who her mother is and all that, but it doesn't really change her character all that much. She's the same at the start as she is in the end. Now, one character that I think is actually quite decent, I would only say decent, is Rost. So he's like Aloy's guardian. And you can see how much he cares for Aloy, and he is quite tough. But full spoilers ahead in this video, and when he dies, his death is impactful for the short amount of time that you spend with him. Other than that, the rest of the characters are completely bland. To be honest, I'm making this video like 4 weeks after I beat the game, and I can't really remember any of the characters. I remember Erend and Varl, but I think I only really remember them because I played Forbidden West, and even in that game they're not very good, but I'll shut up about Forbidden West. One thing that makes it really hard to get into the story is the character animations. The facial animations are really plasticky, and the skin just looks weird. I don't know, it's almost like plastic or clay. It's really jarring, and it took me out of the experience. On top of that, the writing is just okay. And I think if you combine like weird facial animations with just okay writing, and the cutscenes just become a complete unmemorable mess. And in most cases I just skipped the dialogue unless it had something to do with the world, because the world building is fantastic, because you're learning about what happened in the past in the world. I think they obviously put a lot more time into the old world, but the current world lacks any depth really, and all the characters in it are quite boring. Now, the animations in the full cutscenes, like the starting montage, are really good, and when that happens and the music kicks in, it's just fantastic. And I think there's a problem with loads of open world RPGs that have these conversation trees. You either go for like the static Fallout where they're just, you know, sitting here and all you can see is their face, or you go for the full animation like Horizon. And in Fallout it's jarring, but it serves its purpose. But in Forbidden West it's like they're trying too much, and it actually distracts more than the static image or the static character that Fallout has. So I think it would have been better if they just stuck to the camera on the character. I know not many people would agree with that, but I would personally prefer it. So the best part of this game is hands down the world building. From minute one, I was intrigued at what this world was. It's like a primitive tribal nation, but there's weird machines running around, and you're just like, why? Like, where are these machines coming from? And how the game reveals it is absolutely fantastic. If the world wasn't as good as it was, I would have put this game down and said goodbye, because as an open world game, it's not very good. But the world building itself is absolutely phenomenal. So you find out at the start that Aloy is motherless, and she gets this focus that basically makes her see things as like really high tech. And she's the only one that has one, and she's at such a big advantage over everyone else, because everyone else doesn't understand the technology, and they worship all this old technology as their gods, which whoever came up with that premise is a genius. Now, as I said, the current world is quite boring, but learning about the old world is fascinating. So at the start I was really hooked because it was new, but as you go through the world you realise that the current world is like really underdeveloped, and just playing through the main story when it doesn't involve the old world becomes quite boring, because as I said, the characters are just a bit crap. But then once you get into the final third of the game, the story ramps up, and it's pretty much all old world stuff, and I absolutely loved it. You explore the old rooms of science labs, listening to audio logs of the people before, and learning what their lives were like and what they were doing to try to save the world, and it's brilliant. It's rare in an open world game that the main story overshadows the side stuff, but in this game it definitely does. Even though the audio logs are poorly paced, and by that I mean as you're walking through the ruins and you listen to an audio log, they're not spaced out well enough, so you could start one, keep exploring, and like 3/4 of the way through you'll get to another one. BioShock did that absolutely brilliantly, and I think Horizon certainly could have learned something from that. But going back to the current world, they don't really develop the people very well, and I think the settlements are quite boring. There's not really much to do in it, and only a few side quests. And the side quests in this game, I'm not even going to spend much time. I literally just want to say that the side quests are just plain bad. That's it. There's not much to talk about. They're boring. The characters are boring. They're usually just turn on your focus and follow a trail until you find something. But they're just not worth doing. And after maybe completing, I'd say 10, 12, like maybe 15 of them, I just gave up. They were just completely bad. Now, before we go into the gameplay, I just kind of want to talk a bit about the graphics. So this game is gorgeous. It was gorgeous on the PS4, and on the PS5 running in 60 FPS, it's even better. Now, there are some issues with bloom where the world is too bright loads of the time, and this was in Forbidden West too, but most of that can be excused once you're walking around. Now, exploring the world while beautiful is really boring. And once again, this was the same with Forbidden West, but there's just no organic points of interest that the game just leads you towards. It's always just following map markers. And people try to put this on the same pedestal as Breath of the Wild, but it's not even close. Like, it's just, like, Breath of the Wild is here and Horizon Zero Dawn is here. And then Elden Ring is here and Horizon Forbidden West is here. Just how Breath of the Wild and Elden Ring bring you to points of interest organically is just night and day different with both Horizon games. I personally can't find any enjoyment in exploring the world of Horizon Zero Dawn and Forbidden West. One more thing on like the presentation side that I'd like to talk about. The machines make this really satisfying noise when you hit them. I can't even replicate it. I can't even tell you what it sounds like. It's just like a metallic-y machine noise. That's the best thing I can do to explain it. But it's really satisfying when you knock off a piece of armor and you hear the clunk. So now let's talk about the gameplay. And bows are cool. They're the coolest weapons in games. I love bows. I love Legolas. I love anything to do with a bow. I'm there. Every single RPG I ever play, I play as a hunter or an archer or a rogue. I just love bows. So this was right up my alley. And at the start, it's really fun because the machines are quite difficult. And then about maybe halfway through, maybe a third way through, the game becomes really easy. But then you get into like the sand area and then the game kicks your arse again. But anyway, Aloy has a lot of weapons. I wish she had a few more weapons. And the melee combat is super boring. That's all I'll say about that. They improved it in Forbidden West, but the melee combat is just really bad. So at the start, it kind of gives off light Monster Hunter vibes, where some of the bigger enemies, you feel the need to use traps and tripwires, and them things to give you like an advantage. But then eventually the game balance is just all off. On normal difficulty, you just don't need to use these after like the first 5 hours. I would even argue if you knew what you were doing, you really won't need to use a trap in the game, full stop, unless it's for a mission or for like a side challenge. Fighting the humans in the game is boring, plain and simple. They usually take one headshot. Their AI isn't very good. Stealth is crap. Melee combat is crap. So fighting the bandit camps, just not worth doing unless you want to 100% the game, which I don't want to do because the open world activities aren't very good. But the bow combat is quite fun because there's loads of different bows, loads of different types of arrows, and they all have different elements, and different machines are weak to different elements, and that's when it kind of starts to get complex. But then eventually, as you get further into the skill tree, you unlock concentration, which basically slows down time. And once you get that, the game is over. All you need to do is just use concentration, and you can pretty much kill any enemy in the world. You also get this thing that if you jump and hold L2 in midair to aim, it slows down time. So basically the game then just becomes a rhythm of jumping, L2, slowing down time, hitting, jumping, holding L2, and then the game just becomes really easy, and I think the balance is completely off. Now I have heard on hard, or the ultra hard I believe is the final difficulty, the game does become a bit more methodical, but the normal difficulty just isn't balanced very well. And I did mention the skill tree there. The skill tree in this game is crap. Basically you can have double, triple notch arrows, and you can slow down time, like they're the useful ones. But then there's so many quality of life improvements, like extra health from healing items, or extra things when you scavenge, or being able to override machines and mount them. And then there's another one where once you mount them, you can't call them, so then you have to unlock something further down the tree so that you can call them back. The majority of the skills are quality of life improvements, and it's just not a fun skill tree, because it just doesn't feel like Aloy is changing much over the game. It's just things are becoming less tedious, which is just not a good design for a skill tree. It was fixed in Forbidden West though. Now the one time when the combat is really good are the hunting trials, because they force you to do different things. Now there could be one where there's Ravagers around the Thunderjaw, and you have to take the gun off the back of a Ravager to kill a Thunderjaw. Or you might have to freeze a certain enemy first and then take this part, or you might have to only use a rope caster or things like that. And they're really fun, and I wish the combat was more sandboxy, like a certain open world game called Breath of the Wild. Once again, there's another comparison. It just can't escape it. Breath of the Wild is better. But I wish it was more sandboxy, so then it forced you to do things. Again, I heard on the harder difficulties that you do have to be a bit smarter. I would have liked if normal difficulty was better balanced, because as a reviewer I like to review games on normal, because that's how the majority of people will play it, so it's kind of stupid reviewing a game on hard or ultra hard. And one last thing that I forgot to mention, and this was to do with the open world, was every time you pick something up, there's an animation. So you walk, you press triangle to pick up a piece of wood or something, and then it stops you for like, I wouldn't even be surprised if it's a second. or maybe even 2. But when you have to pick up 7 branches, 8 berries, loot 6 enemies, and then all of a sudden you're looting for like 6 minutes, and it's just ridiculous. Ghost of Tsushima, when you pick something up, you can pick it up on horseback. There's no animation. Straight pick up. They didn't fix this in Forbidden West, and I wish they had, because it's so annoying because you're constantly picking things up in Zero Dawn and Forbidden West, and I just don't understand how they made such a big mistake. Like, on its own, having a small animation for picking something up is very minor, but when you're picking up things constantly, and I mean constantly to craft stuff, it just becomes an absolute chore. As I said, in the end, the combat became really easy, so I kind of became bored of it. If it wasn't for the amazing final third of the game and kind of me wanting to beat it to make this video, I certainly would have given up. I don't really think the game's very good, to be honest. It's clear that the world building is amazing, and the characters from the old world are way more interesting than the characters from the current world. Now, this was something that they fixed in Forbidden West, kind of. The old world is still better than the new world in Forbidden West, but they definitely created a better balance there. I think all in all, I'm glad I went back to this just to experience it from this lens, just so I could formulate my own opinion on it. Strangely, I was actually completely unspoiled going into it, even though I've listened to all sorts of PlayStation content and podcasts, and I just never heard what the story was about, so I was really happy about that. Now, obviously, I am glad that I played it before Forbidden West, because I would have been completely lost, and I wouldn't have been able to review it as well as I think I did if I didn't play Zero Dawn. If there's a good story recap on YouTube, which I assume there is, I would just skip this game and then play Forbidden West. It's a way better open world game, still has plenty of issues. I only gave it a like on GameXplain, so if you want to watch my review for Forbidden West, then just look up Forbidden West review GameXplain. I might leave it in the description. But there we have a retrospective review on Horizon Zero Dawn on PlayStation 5. It's 60 FPS and it's kind of just an okay game. But I really appreciate your time. I would love to know what you think about this game. And also if you've played Forbidden West and how you think they compare to each other. Try to keep it spoiler free in the comments. So please, thank you very much, even though I shouldn't have said that, because now there's going to be people spoil it if there is someone that wants to comment. But thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. Follow me on Twitter and join the Discord down below. And I'll see you all on the next video. Goodbye.